Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
He said he gon' huff and puff and blow my mind up. You meet an island girl, she might Jxxiii wind up.
Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show. I want to thank Jxxiii for the intro music. You can find a link to her music in the show description. My guest today is Sam Liebowitz. Sam is known as a conscious consultant, is a facilitator, mentor, speaker, healer, serial entrepreneur, and host of the top-rated radio show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, and is a three-time best-selling author and author of the #1 empowerment book, Everyday Awakening. He's been in business since 1993 and has owned several successful businesses. His current ventures include alternative broadcasting, and Double Diamond Wellness in Manhattan. Sam has lectured in several venues in New York City, including being a featured guest at TEDx Upper West Side in 2016. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Deepak. Thank you for having me on your show. I always appreciate it, especially being a fellow show host. It's always nice, as they say, to be on the other side of the microphone.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I appreciate you being here. So, I like to start off with this question. When we're kids growing up, we have this notion, or maybe our parents have this notion of be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an accountant, or fireman, astronaut, whatever. How did you get to doing what you're doing today?
Well, when I was a kid, I actually did want to be an astronaut. However, I've had glasses since I was in third grade. And when I got to high school, at the time, I found out that all the astronauts had come to NASA through the Air Force, and you had to be an Air Force pilot. And to be an Air Force pilot, you had to have 20/20 vision. And I didn't want to join the military, and I didn't have 20/20 vision. So I was like, I guess that dream went up in smoke. But how I got to be doing to what I'm doing today is a very twisty, turny, windy road that really I started off in technology, working in financial services. Eventually I got to a nonprofit. I was systems manager for a nonprofit. And then I jumped ship, did a couple of different things. I worked with a partner with a video publishing company. We used to publish anime videos for the US market way before, Pokemon became popular. I then even had a business in the aerospace industry. I never sort of lost my love of the idea of space exploration, being a child of the Star Trek generation. So and during the Web 1.0 days, I had a website for space qualified hardware, software, and services. But when the shuttle Columbia blew up, that I had to kind of put that on the side because the industry was depressed for a number of years, and I knew it wouldn't recover too quickly. From that, I got into real estate, of all things, and I pretty much lost my shirt with that. I actually, on my show I recorded earlier today, I kind of talked about that. And then I met a guy at a party. And I was like, so what do you do? And he's like, oh, I'm an acupuncturist. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. But in his next breath, he was like, but I've decided to become a Buddhist monk, and I'm selling off all my worldly possessions. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of different. I'm like, well, did you sell your acupuncture practice yet? He's like, nah, but I'm talking to some people, and we're talking a little bit more. And he says, oh, yeah. And I have this internet radio station. I'm like, wait a minute. This sounds familiar. Acupuncturist, radio station. I'm like, what's your name again? And he says, Giorgio Rapetti. And I'm like, I know who you are because my friend Larry does a radio show on your network, and he's told me about you, but he's never put us together. And so there he is standing in front of me in living color, and we get together a week later, and I go to his office, and I'm like, well, if I help you to sell your business, tell me all about it. Because I really just wanted to help him. And, if I help him sell his business, he'd go and become a monk. And we're talking. And the acupuncture practice was interesting, but I'm not an acupuncturist. I had no real interest in that. And he started talking about the radio station. And I have a background in technology and public speaking. In case you can't tell, I love to talk. And I thought that was really cool. And I really got into the idea of the radio station. And by the end of this meeting, I was like, well, if I can't find someone to buy your business, I'll just buy it myself. And we both kind of laughed about it. And I go home that night and I tell my wife all about the meeting. And she's like, oh, forget helping him to sell his business. And I'm like, really? And I was kind of crestfallen. She's like, yeah, we may not have much money in the bank, but we may as well put what little bit we have into a business that's actually making money. Let's just buy it ourselves. And I thought, oh, what a great idea. Yeah, let's do that. And so that was 13 years ago, and I haven't looked back.
Okay, I have a couple questions. So first of all, the party where you
the
party where you met him, was it Larry's party?
No.
Okay. And did you give Larry a little bit of ribbing for not connecting you earlier?
Oh, absolutely. Especially when he found out that I was taking it over, and he's like, oh, that's great. And I'm like, yeah, you could have made the connection.
Yeah, well, the universe has plans for us, and it happened when it happened, right? It happened when it was supposed to happen.
Exactly.
And then it sounded like too, and we don't need to go down this path, but it sounded like too, you were almost waiting for your wife to give you we can't do this right now. And it sounds like you're pleasantly surprised when she said, like, let's just buy it ourselves. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, I was pretty open to it, but again, it was like getting two businesses for the price of one. And that's like, I don't know anything about acupuncture. So like that whole half of it, which was actually the primary business.
Oh, so they were a package deal. You had to buy them together?
Yeah, I just got them together. So what we did is we brought in an acupuncturist who he trained in his particular lineage. But then I brought in all these other practitioners because I know a lot of different practitioners at the time. So we became a more generalized wellness center. And my wife is also a psychotherapist, and so it became her private practice as well. But that was 13 years ago. And over the years, like practitioners came and went. We had naturopathic doctors and people who did biofeedback and massage therapy and energy medicine. But people, like, they come, they stay for a few years, and then they go off on their own. So now it's sort of, and we still have the wellness center, but it's sort of consolidated down to, it's really just my wife offering her psychotherapy services, and I offer sort of my coaching and my healing services through the wellness center as well.
Okay, got it. So I think that's a natural segue to, how did you become known as the conscious consultant?
Well, the conscious consultant, believe it or not, predated this whole thing of taking over the wellness center. And, I've been a business owner and an entrepreneur since 93. And I've learned a lot over the years. And like I said, I'm a public speaker. So I used to give these talks around how to start your own small business, because I'd started several small businesses. And I sort of became a mentor, because people, after I do the talk, they come up to me and say, hey, I'm like thinking of starting my own business. Would you mentor me? And I'm like, oh, that's a thing? Oh, yeah, sure. Why not? And so I kind of became a coach and a business mentor. And then I started going to these workshops. A friend of mine gave me a free ticket to the Millionaire Mind Intensive by T. Harv Eker. And that was sort of my first, and I used to be
been there, done that many years ago. Yeah.
Many years ago, right? And I had been into personal development back when I was in college, and I'd been many years that I hadn't done it. And I got this ticket, I went to it, and I met this guy there, and he goes, oh, did you have a good time this week? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, oh, we have this group in New York called the New York Power Team, where we meet once a month and remind ourselves of all the stuff we learned at these seminars. I'm like, cool, sounds like my kind of people. And I started going to this group. And what would happen is they'd have someone come in and do a presentation. And normally they would come in and present about something, and then they'd do a workshop about it. And so I'd go to my wife and go, oh, this person came in and talked about this thing called the Sedona method. They're doing a workshop this weekend. You want to go? And she'd be, yeah, sure. Why not? And I started taking all these workshops around energetic healing, emotional healing, all this stuff. And I wasn't taking these workshops because I ever in a million years thought I would be a healer. I was taking them for my own healing, because I had a very challenging situation early in life. And I knew there was still a lot of emotional scars here. And so I just kept taking these different workshops. And then there was that one workshop called the Ewan Method, where this guy, Dr. Cam Ewan, who was a martial arts master, a rocket engineer, rocket scientist, a chiropractor, all this stuff. It was a very intuitive thing. He actually just recently passed away. So he was such a wonderful healer and human being. And so in the workshop, like most of these workshops, they like give you the background on the modality, they teach it to you, and then they pair you up and you start practicing on each other. And so the second day of this workshop, they asked for volunteers to come up to demonstrate. And so this one woman raises her hand and they pick on her and she goes up and it's like, okay, we need someone to practice with her. Who would like to work on her? And I raise my hand, I'm in the back. They pick on me, I come up and I do this method on her. It's a non-hands-on form of energy healing. And I was like, how do you feel? And she goes, oh my God, I can breathe. I go, oh, that's a good thing. She goes, no, you don't understand. Listen. She takes this deep breath. You hear that? I go, yeah, that sounds good. She goes, no, you don't understand. I've had chronic bronchitis since I was 6 years old in South Africa. I haven't been able to breathe like this since I was a little kid. And I was like, oh. So I was like, the light bulb went off and I was like, oh, so I can actually like use all this stuff I'm learning to help other people. It's not just for myself, but I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. What do I do with this? And so I was sitting meditating on it and kind of the message came down. Well, you're still kind of a consultant, but you're just a different kind of consultant now. And that's where the idea of the conscious consultant was born. And I still started coaching and working with people, but instead of just focusing on strategy and, how do you do this and how do you get your entity and making a schedule and stuff, it was more like looking at people's energetic patterns and feeling into where were they really stuck in their business and where did that come from. And so I started working with people on a much deeper level and where we'd work out what was this energetic blockage. And not only would their business do better, but like all kinds of things in their life would start to get better.
Sam, you said the Yuen method, and I'm not familiar with that. Can you just spell that?
Yuen.
Yuen. Oh, okay.
His name was Cam Yuen, Kam Yuen. So he just kind of named it after himself.
Okay, cool. I'll look that up. So what has been the most, impactful method or process, for your own healing? You kind of mentioned some stuff you went on, in your previous life, and we don't need to go there necessarily, but what's been the most profound thing for you?
Well, believe it or not, it's actually been plant medicine work. About 9 years ago, my wife decides to go to this psychology conference in China. She's Chinese. She's originally from China, but she never goes to conferences. She like hates that stuff. It's like, I love that stuff, but for some reason she decides to go to this conference. And so I have nothing to do this weekend. And on a Friday afternoon, I get this text from a very good friend of mine, actually the guy who introduced me to the guy who I bought the radio station from. Open Heart Sacrament Community, blah, 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 blah. And it's like this long text and I'm reading it. I have no idea what the hell he's talking about. But I see the address on the bottom and it's 7 blocks from where I live. So I thought, it's Friday. I don't have anything to do tonight. Why not? I'll go check it out. So I go there, I show up and there's like nobody there I know. And I'm like, I'm hip deep in the spiritual community in Manhattan. If there's nobody here I know, this is like, it got my attention. And I'm waiting. And my friend finally shows up and I'm like, okay, Alex, what gives? Like, what's it all about? They're cool people, good feeling from it, but what's this all about? No one's talking about what the gathering's about. And he says, oh, well, you heard of ayahuasca? And I'm like, yeah. No, thank you. Like puking all night long in a bucket is not my idea of a spiritual experience. And he's like, no. The lineage we're in, we do something much different. You won't be puking all night long. We're doing a ceremony tomorrow in Brooklyn. Why don't you come? And I'm like, no. Thank you, but no, thank you. Because I really wasn't looking for something like that. And also with a lot of the spiritual teachers and healers I'd studied with up until that point, they were kind of negative against the idea of using plant medicine work. So I was sort of predisposed away from it. But I leave this little gathering, and it was just a meet and greet kind of thing. And I'm walking the 7 blocks back to my apartment. And then I start thinking to myself, and I'm like, this is the only weekend in the entire year. I don't have anything going on. My wife's away. I don't have any workshops. I don't have any friends around. I'm like, I actually have space to say yes to this thing. I go, and if I don't like it, I never have to see any of them again because the only person I know is my friend Alex who introduced me to it. So I thought, I could try it once. Once isn't going to kill me, right? So I call him up the next morning. I say, Alex, I thought about it. I'm in. I'll give it a try. Pick me up. I'll come out to Brooklyn. So he picks me up. We drive out to Brooklyn. I have this huge experience. I felt like by the end of the night, I had been carrying this 1,000-pound weight on my shoulder, and I finally dropped it. And it's not the content of anything that came up was new to me. It was all stuff I knew and I've been working on, but it was the energy of it. So my wife comes back like Sunday night from China, and she immediately, and I'm keep in mind, she's in China. I don't have a chance to talk to her about any of this. She immediately starts responding to me differently because she can feel like I'm different. And then during the week, she starts asking me questions. What's this thing you went to on the weekend? What happened? And what did that? And I start answering her questions as best as I could, but I'm like, it's an experience. I don't know. It's like, why don't you come? They're doing a ceremony next month in Brooklyn again. Why don't you come with me? She's like, no. I'm Chinese. We don't do drugs. I'm like, it's not drugs, it's medicine. But she keeps asking me questions. And finally, I was just like, look, after about 2 weeks of this, I'm like, look, I don't know what else to tell you. Just come for you to experience it, and you'll understand it. And she looks at me and she's like, well, okay, like, talk to the guy who runs it and ask him if he'll give us a break if we come as a couple. I'm like, okay. So I call the guy up the next day. I'm like, hey, if I bring my wife to the next ceremony, can you give us a little bit of a break on the price? And he's like, sure. How much you want to pay? And I go, well, how about this much? He goes, yeah, no problem. So she comes back from working that day, and I was like, oh, honey, by the way, I spoke to the guy. He said, sure, no problem. He'll give us a break if we come as a couple. Total deadpan face, no emotion at all, but I could feel energetically underneath it. She was like, damn, because I just took away her excuse.
I thought you were going to say, sorry to interrupt. I thought you were going to say, she's like, that's not a good enough discount. Something like that.
Yeah, good thing I didn't tell her exactly how much I was going to ask for, because she probably would have said that. So 2 weeks leading up to the ceremony, all kinds of resistance on her side. Oh, I have so much work to do. I got this report. I got this. I got that. And I'm like, okay, but I told him we were coming because you said, okay. She's like, I'm not saying I'm not coming. I'm just saying I got all this stuff. Da, 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 da. Literally up until the morning of the ceremony, she's like, I can't stay there overnight. When I sleep at other people's places, I don't get any sleep. I got all this work to do. We got to come back in the middle of the night. And I'm about to get really angry at her because I know the experience. And I'm like, there's no way we're coming back in the middle of the night. But before I have a chance to say a word, I hear the little voice in the back of my head. Just say yes. Huh? Just say yes. Just get her there and we'll take care of the rest. And I swear to God, I have not heard that voice as clearly before or since. I turn to her and I say, honey, whatever you want to do. You want to come back in the middle of the night? We'll come back in the middle of the night. So we get there. She calms down when I say that to her. We get there. She's super nervous. We drop into the ceremony. She's having her experience. I give her space. Middle of the night, she calls me over and she's like, how are you? She's crying and bawling most of the night. And I'm like, I'm fine. How are you, honey? And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm so pig-headed. Of course, we can't come back in the middle of the night. We'll stay. I'm sorry. And I'm like, oh, it's okay, honey. It's fine. Now, keep in mind, my wife is a psychotherapist. And I had been dragging my wife to, not dragging, but, she was open to coming to these things. But I've been taking her to see these spiritual teachers, these healers, these different groups. But like her response was always the same to every group. But it's always, oh, look at these people. They think they're so spiritual, but they can't even pay their own rent. And like, oh, I don't feel
the practical
anything.
Side, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Very grounded. She's a real Taurus. So, and she always, oh, I don't feel anything. I don't feel anything. I'm like, you can't feel the energy in the room? Oh my God, it was so strong. No, I don't feel anything. But this she felt. And not only did she feel it, but she saw the value of it. She was like, oh my God, this is like getting 10 years of therapy in one night. And because she saw the value in this, like that was the only thing I needed to say, oh my God, this is something good. And that was 9 years ago, a little over 9 years ago. And I tell you, this work has transformed our lives. She now is offering ketamine assisted psychotherapy, which
Mm-hmm.
ketamine is the only legal psychedelic.
Yeah.
And we just went to the Psychedelic Sciences Conference in Denver 2 weeks ago, and that was like amazing, overwhelming, 12,000 people and all these different stuff. Oh my God.
I had some friends there. I had some friends there. Yeah.
Like you can tell, like this industry is about to explode in a big way, but I've just seen the difference it's made in my own life. And not just like the external stuff, but internally. Like you could look at my life and say, it doesn't necessarily look all that different than 9 years ago, but internally it feels completely different.
Amazing. And I think that's a huge validation. I mean, I've been kept abreast. I keep myself abreast of this space and, stuff that MAPS is doing and, all that sort of thing. But I think that just goes, from your own personal experience with your wife's, educational background and career background to kind of have that mind shift change, like, oh yeah, there is something here. I think that speaks volumes for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, like, I believe in this so much. I'm actually doing some kind of educational seminars about it because I see a lot of people come to this work and they're not very educated. They don't know the right questions to ask. They don't understand the history. So I do this 1.5 hour long seminar called Before the Trip to help to really educate people so they can make better choices, and they understand that the real magic of this work is in the integration that follows. So I'm available if people want to learn more about this stuff. I'm happy for people to contact me. But I really do believe we need a lot more education because people, like, now everything's becoming popular and we're going back in a way to the way things were. But then people think, like, just because they take some mushrooms, they can lead a group now, or like just they can buy anything off the street and it's safe. And that's not necessarily so. So I really want to educate people and help them to understand that, like, these are sacred medicines and that there's such a huge difference between doing them on your own and working with a guide and a facilitator and someone who's part of a lineage and they're part of a bigger community and has support. So I really want people to understand, like, this is powerful work, but you want to do it in the right way in order to be safe.
Yeah. Intention and setting is so important for this type of stuff, plant medicine or otherwise, right?
It's they've said it for decades, ever since the 60s. It's set, setting, server.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just for the audience, I don't know when this episode, when you're hearing this versus some others, but I have a couple guests are in the same line. I didn't know we were going to go this way at all, Sam, for sure. But I have a couple guests upcoming too that are talking about, in plant medicine and this sort of thing as well. So this will fit in nicely. So yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Well, introduce them to me. I'd love to have them on my.
Yeah, we'll talk offline. We'll talk offline for sure. I definitely want to do that. So Sam, yeah. So this isn't this even though my background is health related and that sort of thing, this isn't a health related podcast. But I do like to ask my guests, a couple questions in that vein. Sure. So what does your morning routine or health routine, what does that look like for you in a typical day?
Oh, my routine's awful. It really depends. Some days it's much better than others. I'll tell you what my ideal routine is, okay? Because I do it, but I don't do it all the time. I like to get up and maybe about 3 times a week, get to the gym for about a half hour. I'm not one of those guys that work out 3 hours in the gym, but just even a half hour, just for the health. I come back, I take a shower. I have a little bit of a ritual I kind of do when I do certain things in the bathroom, because that's kind of like my time to myself. I then I take a bunch of different supplements. I'm a big believer in vitamins. I've been taking them most of my life. Have a little bit of a breakfast, and when it comes to food, I eat very little processed food. I mean, I eat a little bit of it, but mostly it's fresh food. Again, my wife being Chinese, it's like, in China, it's like, you go to the market every day and buy food. We don't do that. But like, once every couple of weeks, we go to Chinatown, load up on vegetables and stuff. I personally don't eat meat. I don't eat poultry because once I started actually doing the plant medicine work, like the message came down, stop eating meat. And then I even tried it once and I got nightmares, and I was like, okay, no more meat. And then I waited like a year and I tried it again. I got nightmares again. I'm like, okay, that's it. I can't do it anymore. But we like to eat healthy. I go through my day, do my work. I'm on Zoom a lot. And then, we have dinner in the summertime. We lots of salads. In the wintertime, we cook a lot of stir-fried vegetables and stuff. And then, sometimes after dinner, we'll go out for a walk together. I live right next to Central Park, and we'll do, a 2, 3, 4, 5 mile walk sometimes. We really, during the pandemic, it saved our lives. I mean, that was like, we would go out, even late at night. People say, oh, you're crazy, go to Central Park middle of the night. Oh my God, there's still plenty of joggers and people walking around, but go to Central Park at night for a nice walk, come back. And then we probably meditate. Don't meditate every day, but then we meditate for like a half hour, 45 minutes, and also like talk about what comes up during the meditation. I work with Jxxiii, which is a legal, it's not a psychedelic, but it is an Amazonian plant medicine. So sometimes we'll do, once a week, twice a week, we'll do Jxxiii and sit with it, and that really deepens the meditation practice. And then we'll go to bed and get up the next day and do something different, because no 2 days are ever the same for me.
Absolutely. I love that. I just want to keep for the audience something that you said right at the beginning is, go into the gym, get in and get out. And I'm a huge believer, anyone who's talked to me and what I work on with my clients as well, is like, hey, if you want to do the 3 hours and that fits your lifestyle, hey, great. But, I'm about, minimal effective dose, let's get in there. Let's get the most benefit in the short amount of time. You can move on with the rest of your day, the rest of your life. So I love that. So Sam, again, without necessarily, unless you want to, going into some of your, your past and some of that work you've done on it. But if you could go back, again, maybe with a health angle, if you could go back and talk to your 20-year-old self or some earlier period in life self, what advice would you give yourself regarding health?
So this show is probably going to be released in the future sometime. And if you want to know sort of about my past and my history, if you listen to the episode that I recorded today, which is about the importance of the relationship with money, and that actually goes to some very personal stuff. Look for the Conscious Consultant Hour on your favorite podcasting platform and check it out. That will give you a lot. But if I were to go back to my 20-year-old self, really the biggest piece of advice I would have is love yourself. Love yourself, value yourself. Because when we love ourselves and we value ourselves, we will naturally do more of the right things. And I feel that a lot of the times the bad habits we develop and the things that we do that don't serve us come from a lack of self-worth, self-esteem, and self-love.
I love that. And, today's a recording day. So done a few episodes recording today, and this is a recurring theme from the guests. And no coincidence that everyone's been sort of had an energy, healing type of background. I mean, that's just the way it worked out today for who. So I love that. And for everyone listening, we're definitely gonna have links to all of Sam's stuff and to his podcast as well. And if we'll put that, we put that specific link to that specific episode that you recorded today. Right. That whenever people are listening to this episode. Sam, any last words of wisdom or golden nuggets for the audience today?
So I really would love people to understand something, and that is that we are all much more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. I mean, we're creators. We create our life. We create our life through our decisions, through our choices, through our energy, through how we show up in the world. And if there's something in your life that's challenging, if there's something in your life that's not the way you would like it to be, don't focus on the challenge, focus on the solution, focus on where you want to go. And if you want the support of a mentor or a guide or a facilitator, find somebody who speaks to you, who resonates with you, who you feel comfortable to work with. But know that ultimately you have the power. You have complete control over your life. You may not know it. You may not realize it. And there are different processes and different routines, different rituals that can support that and help that. but ultimately you have agency over the things in your life. And just know that you can change anything you want to change. And you don't need to be fixed, because you are not broken, and you are powerful beyond measure. And from that place, you can create a life of magic. I've seen it happen time and time again. I know it's possible for anyone listening to this conversation.
I love it, Sam. I love it. And I get another recurring theme. Yeah, and I say to people all the time, find the person that resonates with you, and people I have, consults or conversations with people to like, hey, if it's not me, that's fine. I'll help
Right.
you find someone. You just find the right person, whatever the modality you resonates with you, and the person that resonates with you. So I love that. I love that answer. Absolutely. And I almost forgot, but I'm going to remember. Sam does have a free gift for the audience as well. It's a free integration checkup assessment. And the URL is a little bit long, so I'm just going to make sure it's in the description there. But Sam, maybe just really in a minute or so, just what does that assessment entail?
So the assessment is for people who, and it's mostly geared towards integrating a psychedelic experience. But actually, the more I talk to people, the more I find that it's appropriate for integrating any kind of peak experience. But it's really there to kind of show you where you're at. It's a self-assessment of kind of, what kind of support do you have to integrate things? What kind of knowledge do you have around integration? What kind of things how do you feel about your ability to integrate these peak experiences?
Can you define peak experience in your own words there?
To me, a peak experience is something outside of our normal experience, where we're in I would say, an altered state of consciousness. And an alternate state of consciousness does not necessarily mean that you're on mind-altering substances. It can be an energetic thing. It can be a spiritual peak experience. It could be going to a weekend and doing a fire walk. That's a peak experience. Anything that's really outside of your norm that takes you to sort of a higher level of living. Got
it. So again, the original intention was for maybe the psychedelic, but it could be for anything, any peak experience, as Sam just outlined for us. So again, the link will be in the description, in the show notes for anyone. Check out this free gift, and hey, there's nothing to lose by doing the assessment, and maybe you gain some insight into yourself by doing the assessment. So Sam, I want to thank you again for being a guest on the show today. It was really informative. It totally went a different direction. I did not know about this the ayahuasca stuff you brought up earlier. So yeah, very, very surprised. Very, very interesting conversation for sure. And yeah, we're definitely gonna have some talk offline here. But again, thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Deepak. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure. It was a fun conversation.
Awesome. So I'm going to throw it back to Jxxiii, who's going to guide us out with some music. Thanks again for listening to the Deepak Saini Show. Exceptional results for the exceptional you. Till next time.
Podcast produced by the Minted Green Company